Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Motherland, Fort Salem. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we have Abigail and the others meeting with the Council of the Seven Rivers, and obviously it's not the whole... Because they'd already long since made their decision already, because they were, like, talking amongst themselves for, like, an hour. And it is kind of sad, like, right, at no point, you know, wasn't, I guess because it's not really a trial, it's just like, no, we made our decision, you're just going to give us answers about what's going on, so. But that was, like, the most frustrating thing, especially for Abigail. And obviously, they tried to sway things a little more their side by having a deal speak all of their the different languages of the different tribes, which is pretty impressive. But obviously, that didn't sway too much. It was about trying to start them off on the good footing. But for them, it's like, right, the Cession and the U.S. have a good enough relationship that is like you bringing any trouble here could potentially put us at war. They don't believe about the Camarilla. I mean, I guess the Camarilla is still that existence that only a small portion of people are aware of. You know, outside of, like, most people at, like, Fort Salem and stuff like that, the general public doesn't know. And I guess the Cession kind of, except for, like, big stuff, I mean, it makes sense, too, because the Camarilla, as we know, are in very powerful positions, so they're able to quiet that down. Because any, like, terroristic acts, they can kind of just, like, lump in, you know, they can cover up or just kind of put it on the witches and everything, so... I'm like, how did you not even hear about the witch plague situation? But I guess Silver made sure that was kind of like that information was submerged or something. Because obviously Penelope's death is one thing, but I don't even think the public knows about that witch plague that was running through and what happened to Penelope. Like, obviously they needed to create the narrative of, oh my god, these witches are terrorists and they killed my daughter. So I think that's all that really comes down to, but it's like, wow, it's so interesting that this Cession is so far behind. Like, obviously we know the Camarilla have been active since season 1, and it's like, yeah, and all this time later, you're still believing them to be fairy tales. Because I'm like, did you not, I mean, because Alder, like, cross paths, the Camarilla have long since been existing, but they've been such a secret organization. But now they're still a secret organization. The problem is they've just grown stronger over the centuries, and now they're the full-scale operation that Anacostia and them saw, like they have a full-blown army of their own, which is going to be a problem. People well-trained and equipped to fight against witches, you know, and not just to fight, to hunt down and massacre. But obviously a deal, I guess, because that's the thing. They heard about what happened to the Tarim, because they're like, oh, you're Tarim. We're sorry what happened to your people, because the only people left are him and his sister. But I'm like, so you know about that, but I guess they don't know it's the Camarilla's thing. It's just they've heard whispers of, like, right, your people were massacred. I'm like, you know, oh, it coincides, because I guess to them it's like the Camarilla are nothing more than boogeyman stories, and that's kind of how they've always been. I mean, until Abigail and the others found out, like, that the Camarilla were the ones responsible for a lot, and they didn't really know the existence of the Camarilla either. It's such a, you know, they were believed to be dead. Wasn't it, like, didn't Alder say she, like, wiped them out, like, 200 years ago? At least believe she did, but, you know, they treat witches like the virus, but they're the virus that just happened to manage to hold on. But regardless, they tell them about the Camarilla, but obviously for them it's like, well, that also more reason to send you back to the U.S. because that's going to put us in odds, because now you've brought this war to our doorstep and we didn't ask for it. But some of the council was on their side, like, right, we send them back, it's a death sentence. But in the end, they came to the decision with everything going on, because Scylla was like, right, the Cession's always been good to us. She's like, it was good to me. It brought in my family who were Dodgers. And I remember coming to elementary school here. Like, I had good memories here. Even Rael is from the Cession. So, like, obviously this home has been a good place for people in the past. So, but if you just want to send us on our way, we'll go. Tally's even say, like, I'm from California. We'll go there. And ultimately, the council decided, hey, so we'll help you leave and give you all the supplies, but you can never come back to the Cession, including Rael, which is super jacked up. But I guess it's like, it makes sense, because if Rael came back, it would always be like, she'd always had that asterisk beside herself that would always be following her into the session. But it's still like, right, you're asking her to leave behind her home. Her dad is still here. But that's beside the point. And obviously, Abigail was frustrated by that because it's like, right, the point was to get the council on our side, plus we could get everyone in the session on our side in this fight against the Camarilla. Once again, with the army that they've amassed in this time, they're going to need everyone's help that they can. Because I feel like they're still so divided. Because we don't know what the witch situation looks like internationally. Obviously, this is like a very... Because I think the Camarilla is very U.S. bound. There might be like sections around the world, but I think they're still like a U.S. operated like organization. Like they were kind of born in a new world. And I think they've been kind of here ever since. So I think they're more a U.S.-based organization than they are. But they operate internationally, but I think they're mainly like a... But there might be, like I said, maybe much like the Spree, there might be like an... Because I'm trying to remember, because if I remember correctly, the Spree was international. It wasn't just U.S.-based, I don't think. But I could be misremembering. Either way... Because for Abigail... As a soldier, she said, like, my whole job, I thought as a soldier was to protect people, but she feels like she failed so many people. Charvel, Penelope, she's like, even Rael. It's like, it feels like we're just on the losing foot instead of like, this wasn't much of a win because all we did was save ourselves and didn't help the greater cause. I mean, I guess things kind of worked out in the end, sadly, when the Camarilla somehow tracked him down, which is like, how did they find you in this? Like, how would they know that you're here? Because I'm assuming, well, President Wade got some information last episode for her to leave with the Marshal and M, like, whatever it was, and she made them stay put. So it's like, they must have been aware of what she was up to. It's like, why, like, maybe she heard the Camarilla were in the air. I don't know, like, maybe it was some decisions that Silver was making that kind of trickled down to her. I have no idea. Because I was about to say, like, do you think there's some correlation there? She just happens to leave before the Camarilla show up, but why not give them a warning about it, you know? So that makes me, like, how did the Camarilla find them? I was like, not unless they have the Marshals, you would think they would have to have the Marshals' capability of tracking. Not unless they ended up getting someone from the council. You don't think it's the one, Thelma's cousin, the one that was like, oh, I'm on your side? Like, I was rooting for you? I'm like... Because you would assume, like, maybe someone amongst that council, they would probably promise, like, hey, if you give us these people, we'll get them out of your hair. Like, either... That's the only thing I can assume. But to be fair, I guess it's just, like, it'd have to be some human... No witch would turn on other witches. I mean, not unless it's like, right, not unless they didn't believe about the Camarilla thing and they just thought these people were from the U.S. government. If you want them, you can have them. Like, someone amongst the 7 counts. Because, like, they're the only ones who knew where they were. I don't know. I think it's a very key thing that never got revealed in this episode. So, we'll see. Like I said, my number one suspect is Thelma's cousin, just because her just being like, yeah, I'm rooting for you guys. It's kind of a terrible situation. But, you know, might end up being someone else. And maybe, I'm kind of rooting against the one ally they had amongst the council, necessarily, you know? Either way, Camarilla show up, and who's with them other than Alban showing off the new vocal cords, you sick, twisted bastard. And for him, it's just like, yeah, I know it's disgusting, your diseased, your sick blood, and, you know, but, you know, he's like, whatever, I didn't know it was going to work, but ultimately it did. And he just needed the vocal cords to last long enough. Luckily, I was like, oh, is Thelma dead? It's like, no, she's not. Luckily, she came back in time, granted. Her soldiers were killed, and she kind of left everyone there defenseless because she didn't want to take the chance they might try to run or anything on their own, because she doesn't trust them, they don't trust her, so she had their powers blocked. And it's just kind of, you're just like, okay, Alban's going to finally get his, right? Well, sadly, no, the bastard gets away, but it was pretty... great when Alder showed up. Just interesting timing with the way she took care of like the Camarilla. I was like, yo, I guess it was almost like a seed was planted. I mean, the mycelium is kind of like a fungus. So I guess it was almost like a plant where just like it infected them and then like copies of herself grew out of them. Very reminiscent of something else that I won't spoil what, but I kind of have a similar thing. But it's like, yeah, the whole like Ant-Man thing, or even the they've even kind of utilized it at least like once on Legends of Tomorrow with Ray, aka Adam. So I just think that's kind of a neat little utilization of that. That's what just kind of being a seed on the inside and just kind of like exploding them one by one. But she couldn't do it to Albin because the mycelium still recognizes him as one of her daughters because of the vocal cords. Because of that, that's the only reason why the bastard survived. Yet again, it's like, when will he finally get his? I hope he gets it super hard. He needs to. Like, that bastard doesn't need to get off easy. I know, weird choice of words. He needs to like suffer. Like, after all the shit he's done and pulled, it's like that guy and his smug and everything. He really, really deserves to like get like a super brutal death, but we'll see how it ends for him. I can't. He's definitely going to get his comeuppance. I'm just so curious how it's going to happen. But once again, the silver lining to this is that now Thelma is on their side and she will convince the other members, like, right, they have to pay because now they've spilled our people's blood as well. So they've dragged us into this war. So it's like, right, the only way we're all going to survive this is if we fight it together. But Alder's in pretty bad condition because I think using her power like that is taking a strain on her because the poison, it's slow acting, and the mycelium is widespread, but it is slowly affecting Alder. But the way it's affecting her, it's like, if it's affecting her, then what does that mean for Raelle? Because like Alder's hair start turning white, because I guess like the only thing that's keeping her going, because she doesn't have her biddies anymore, so the only thing that's keeping her going is the mycelium. And it's like, probably like, if anything happens to mycelium, because she's so interconnected with it, the mycelium goes, she probably knows that this is a temporary job. Like, her job is to protect the stewards of the first song, and then after that, like, she's going to return to the mycelium and rest. Like, she's not going to live forever. She's not going to have like the long, because I think also for her, it's like, right, I've had my time. It's time to pass the torch to someone else. Raelle only has a portion of it, plus she was already alive before she connected with the mycelium, so her circumstances are different. So, but that's why you're like, is the mycelium feeding off of her life force to some extent just to stay alive? We have not checked back in, like, other than what Scylla got from her like last episode, we have no idea what to fully expect from like that circumstance, because we have not fully checked in for a while. And you combine that with Tally's recent vision, does not bode well for Raelle's future, which her dad ended up getting dragged into this, which I love. Still being like, you were very brave and a bit stupid, you know? And obviously for him, it's like, I've got to do, you know, when it comes to the people I care about, I'm willing to do whatever. Like, he got very, very close to getting his throat slit, because it's like, right, Raelle's already lost her mom again. No way she's going to be too happy about coming back and finding out her dad's dead. So, which, interesting thing, obviously Abigail didn't really think too much of, like, Tally told her about her vision, but she's like, right, you must be stressing, you know, he's like, I dream about Raelle, like, all the time, and it's like, right, that must be all that is. It's like, maybe. And so what she ends up doing is like, right, have you ever tried changing the future? And I was like, that is a very important distinction between being able to see the future and being able to change the future you see. Very much like if you've seen Legacies, kind of spoilers, a character kind of develops that kind of ability. I'll kind of leave it at that. So, and that's a very important distinction, because seeing the future just means it's just stuck in stone, but being able to change it is one thing, which Tally can, but her example, her test of it was stopping the glass that she saw fall, and she saved it. So it's like, yes, the future's not written in stone. And then Abigail walked by the desk and ended up breaking it either way. So it's like, right, it was a small thing, but the implication being that no matter what she does, you can intervene and postpone it, but the future will always end up happening. That things are inevitable. You just postpone it. And so it's like, right, But maybe it's a sign that, right, if you can interfere that much to even postpone it, then maybe, just maybe, you can completely change the outcome as well. It could still go either way. I'm sure Tally more so took it as a, oh man, no matter what I do, it's inevitable. It's kind of what it is. The end result still ends up the same. It just comes in it might come in a different way. Very Final Destination esque, like, oh, this wasn't the way you're supposed to die, but death gets what it's owed. So it'll come back to you in some shape or form. So it could be like that of like, right, maybe we can change how we get to the Royale situation, but something else, destiny and fate will always play out the way it's meant to. Once again, there's many different ways that could be seen. Just, I guess it really comes down to whether you're optimistic or pessimistic. I think that's what that comes down to. But really quickly, speaking of Alder, I thought it was a really nice conversation. It seems like she's only gotten 3 stewards. The steward she picked up last episode, Khalida, and that other guy. But her and Khalida had like this very heart-to-heart, because the place they're in right now is her childhood home. It's like, I had to pick somewhere where I felt safe. And that's sad to know that she has not felt safe since that long. Because for her, obviously, this was so long ago. This was many lifetimes ago. That like the fun and learning to sew from her mom and singing together with her family. The Camarilla came, murdered her family. Obviously, we know the circumstances with her sister. But event that, but she ran off with her sister and they were on the run, scared, and obviously, she eventually was alone in this world. And obviously for Khalida, her and Adil were away when their parents were murdered. And it's like, in that moment, she became their people's leader, and because she never had time to grieve. Just like Alder, it's like, right, we gotta run. She was too busy running, trying to protect herself and her sister. Once again, we know how that played out. Eventually losing her sister, but, and it is interesting, because even Khalida kind of comments on, like, who would have guessed we'd end up where we are, trusting each other, because if you remember, like, Alder tried to get Khalida, the Tarim, on their side early on in the series, and Khalida was super against it. She didn't like Alder, she didn't trust Alder, and now it's like, oh, now we're here, we're like survivors brought together, so... But when they called, like I said, she luckily showed up in time. I was thinking it might be Nikta who would end up saving them, but turns out it wasn't. I think that's fascinating because Nikta kind of got out of there pretty quickly, and I was like, well, I guess the fact that she didn't want to take the chance that the Cession might... Not the Cession, the Council of the Seven might see her and find out who she is, because it's like, right, me being the leader of the spree, not a good look, so probably best not to stick around while that happens, because part of me wonders, has she called, she's done shit in the Cession before, I'm sure, and she's probably at the top of their list, so she probably doesn't, even with her face hidden, she probably doesn't want to take the chance of being around them. So she kind of bails. She's like, don't worry, I land on my feet. So it makes you wonder, probably when the time comes, Nikta will come in clutch, but makes you wonder where she went off to now. Off on her own too, so we'll have to wait and see. It's interesting timing too that while she's gone, Alder ends up showing up. Not unless Nikta decides to come back to check up on him, and then ends up seeing Alder there in her condition. We'll see how whether that ends up being a thing, because obviously they've got to be in the same room again. They have to be. They've been in the same area, they just haven't been in the same scenes together. So because they've kind of luckily avoided each other. But how's Nikta going to react when she finally sees Alder again face to face? We'll have to wait and see on that, because I'm waiting to see, because I think her reaction, she won't even really know. I don't think she knows how she's going to fully react. She might have an idea, but I think when she's face to face with Alder again, she'll surprise herself, so that's all interesting. At the same time, we cut back to Acostia and Sterling. I finally got the character. I had to look it up because they never actually say his name in the show, and I never could remember this character's name because it doesn't come up that often. But yeah, we find out, luckily, hey, he's still alive. And Acostia was like, hey, I fixed you. Sadly, they're about to rip out our vocal cords. But luckily, they underestimated Acostia because it isn't just her Fort Salem training. Luckily, having a friend being allied with Scylla last season, she learned a thing or two from the spree. I'm sure she never thought that would happen. So made that guy kill the other doctor, freed them, and also took his face. And I guess they took those recordings of Anacostia, and that's how they were kind of able to trick Abigail. And obviously they made it at a frequency only she would hear. I thought that was kind of interesting. But luckily they got away. But when they left, they were like, no, we have to go back. We have to find out what they're doing here. And it turns out it's a training camp. Well, along with their own experiments, because they found out about Alvin for themselves, hearing it from another Camarilla about what experiments he was doing. So that's the thing. He's testing it on himself, but that work he'll do, other people he might try and replicate it in other people too. So they don't just have to like make imitations and copy those voices. They should be able to use the vocal cords of witches themselves. And I don't know if anyone else is going to go down the route he is with how they've handled that, because they're so very like pure blood about that. Even Alvin's very pure blood about that, but we'll see how that plays out. But it does not look good. Like, obviously the witches have their own army, but once again we see that the Camarilla has a vast army of its own. And I mean, how that compares to like the normal witches, which we got a little peek at on Fort Salem. Them they can no longer like study mother tongue, and the colonel's like, right, you mother tongue, like, right, we're supposed to be making it so the witches don't feel like outsiders to society, like we're supposed to all be in this together. So once again, like, this show is a giant metaphor for like racism and kind of making someone like lose their culture. So it's it's very much the same allegory that like mutants have, because it's like, right, you're kind of making people lose their culture. It's like mother tongue, it's a part of their culture and everything, and you want to stifle that. You want to stifle them, because it's like, no, you're going to conform and be what we want you to be. You've been able to live your own lives for too long. You're too powerful. You need to be under our control. So, and once again, we know that, I mean, who knows if there are people amongst them who are not Camarilla related. You'd assume everyone there, including that colonel, would be, but maybe not. Maybe there are good people amongst them. Either way, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us going forward to the next episode. We're actually rapidly going through this season, which is actually kind of wild to think about. It's not, what was this? This was episode 5, maybe, I think? So we're already at the halfway point. Yeah, I think this is episode 5. Yeah, this is like the halfway point already. So that's pretty wild. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.